on this topic of is Mariv a Rishus or is it a Chov? Now, and in this topic, we're about to learn one of the famous stories. You guys have heard this story even already. It's a famous story. You'll hear it in its right place. You'll see it inside with all its detail. Says the Gemara now. Tana Rabbanon. It's 4 lines up from the really, really wide lines. The last word on the line is Maisa, and the word right before Maisa is Tuf/Resh. That stands for Tanu Rabbanon. The Rabbanon taught. Tanu Rabbanon. Also, we also know when it says Tanu, we know it's a traffic sign for what? It's for a Tana. Taf Nun. Also means it's Tanam. It's from the people who wrote the Mishnayos. Says the Gemara now. Tanu Rabbanon. The Chachamim taught, the Tanaim taught, Maisa b'Talmud echad sheba lifnei Rabbi Yehoshua. There was a story of a student who came in front of Rabbi Yehoshua, and Amarle, he's asked Rabbi Yehoshua, Tfilas Arvis is Rishos or Chova? Is Mariv a Rishos, or is it an obligation? Is it something that's, we explained earlier, that doesn't really mean fully Rishos? It means, is it like a full obligation, or is it not a full obligation? It's something which if another mitzvah came along, you would do the other mitzvah first. Amar Lei, Rabbi Yeshua responded to him, as we learned above, it was the opinion of Rabbi Yeshua, that's Rishos. It's not a full obligation. Balifnei Rabbi Gamliel, then the same student came in front of Rabbi Gamliel. He was a nunnik, I guess. I don't know why he's asking 2 people the same question. He's trying to cause issues, maybe. I don't know. Balifnei Rabbi Gamliel came in front of Rabbi Gamliel. Amarlei, Tfilas Avris Rishos or Chova? Is Mariv a Rishos or is it a Chov? Amarlei, Aleph Lamed is Amarlei Chova. He said it's an obligation, a full obligation. Comes this Talmud, he goes, aha, really? Amarlei, the first word on the line is Aleph/Lamed. Amarlei, V'halo, Rabbi Yehoshua Amarli. But Rabbi Yehoshua said to me, Rishos. It's a really Rishos. It's not a Chov, it's a Rishos. Not like you. You're telling me, Rabbi Gamliel, that it's a Chov. Rabbi Yehoshua told me it's a Rishos. Amarlei, Rabbi Gamliel, now we need some background information. Rabbi Gamliel was the Nasi. Okay, he was the prince of Klal Yisrael. It was his base medrash. You didn't mess with Rabbi Gamliel. If ever he said, went. He was like the king. He was the prince of Klal Yisrael. He was the king. So he ran the base medrash. So he had a plan. Rabbi Gamliel had this plan. Amarlei, and he was a prince that ruled with an iron fist. And Rabbi Yeshua was like the major Talmud Chacham of the time. And Rabbi Gamliel kept on starting up with Rabbi Yehoshua. He felt that this was the proper way to lead the sometimes we feel that the leadership has to be very strong. The leader can't let even the person who's comparable to him in Chachma, but it was important for him to show that to give strong leadership to Klal Yisrael. And so Rabbi Gamliel, he took that to say that he should be very, very strong, and even if Rabbi Yehoshua starts up with him in halacha, he has to put him in his place, and Rabbi Gamliel has to stay strong. Amar Lei. So we'll continue in the Gemara with this story. With that introduction, we'll understand the upcoming story. Amar Lei. Hamtin, Rabbi Gamliel said to the student, Hamtin, wait. Hamtin is to wait. Hamtin until sheyichnesu balei trisin lebeis hamedrash. Wait until balei trisin is a slang for the Chachamim. Rashi explains why. Balei trisin lebeis hamedrash. Wait till the Chachamim come to the Beis Hamedrash. Kishenichnesu balei trisin. When the Chachamim came to the Beis Medrash, so Rabbi Gamliel began his plan. Amar HaShoel, the person asking a question got up. V'shoel, and he asked, Tfilas Arvis Rishos or Chova? Is Tfilas Arvis a Rishos or is it a Chov? So in front of all the Chachamim now, the Talmud came up and he asked the question, is it a Rishos or a Chova? They all got Amar Lei Rabbi Gamliel, Chova. Rabbi Gamliel said it's a Chov, it's an obligation. Amar lahem, Rabbi Gamliel leChachamim. Then Rabbi Gamliel said to the Chachamim, Klum yesh adam shecholik b'davar zeh? Is there anybody who argues on this matter? Anybody care to disagree with me? Amar le Rabbi Yehoshua lav. Rabbi Yehoshua, who was the spokesman for the Chachamim because he was the greatest of the Chachamim at that time. Amalei Rabbi Yeshua laugh. Nope. Nobody wants to argue. Rabbi Yeshua already, we're going to see, how from earlier times Rabbi Yeshua learned his lesson. You do not mess with Rabbi Gamliel. So even though Rabbi Yeshua held that the halacha, as we learned above, was that Marav is Rishus, Rabbi Yeshua speaks up over here. He says, no, nobody disagrees with you, Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel, whatever you said, what you said goes. And I agree, Marav is a chov. Amar lei, Rabbi Gamliel said to Rabbi Yeshua, V'halo, but mishimcha amruli rishus. In your name, from your name, mishimcha from your name, amruli, they said to me, rishus. Somebody told me that you were walking around telling people that Marav is a rishus. Amar lei Yehoshua. Amar lei. He said to him, Yehoshua, because he didn't call him Rabbi Yeshua. He says he's the Nasi. Remember, we learned he's a chaver to Rabbi Yeshua. He's not his Talmud. So he said to Yehoshua, Amud al raglecha, stand on your feet, v'yi'idu b'cha, and give testimony that you really agree to me. Amad Rabbi Yehoshua raglav. Rabbi Yeshua stood up on his feet. V'amar, and he said, Ilmale anichai. If it was not, Ilmale is a great word, by the way. Ilmale means if it was not that anichai, that I am alive. If it was that anichai v'hu meis, and he was dead, Yachol hachai. The first one in line is Yachol. Yachol hachai lahachish es hameis. The live one could disagree. He could say, the mace, he made it up. He made up the story. If you told me that's just somebody who wasn't alive was the one who, if you tell me that somebody who's dead said in my name that I hold that Marav is a Rishus, I could say, it's not true. I would have no problem. It wouldn't be so complicated to say, it's not true. The Achshav, and now, Shani Chai v'hu Chai though. I'm alive and he's alive. He's standing right here in the base medrash with us, the person who reported in my name that I say Marav is a Rishus. Heyech, it's a great word. Heyech, how? Yachol hachai lahachish es hachai. How could the live one, Yachol, how? Yachol, heyech Yachol, how is it possible for hachai, the live one, lahachish es hachai, to deny what the other live one? So now Rabbi Gamliel, he went into action. Rabbi Gamliel Yoshev v'doresh. So Rabbi Gamliel sat down, and he sat v'doresh, and he started darshaning halachos, and he made Rabbi Yeshua stand in his place. It was like a punishment. Stand in the corner, Rabbi Yeshua. He made Rabbi Yeshua stand there. Everybody else was sitting, and Rabbi Gamliel took the podium. He would darshan, and Rabbi Yeshua had to stand there and be quiet. He had to be total silent. In total silence, Rabbi Yeshua made a raglov, and he would stand in his place, and he couldn't argue. Until what happened? Finally, there was an uprising. Ad sherananu kol ha'am. All of the nation was standing there, and they made a big taram about it. They made a big deal. V'amru chutzbes haturgaman, and they said to chutzbes haturgaman, he was. You'll notice. Remember, if you didn't remember, look out for him this Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, when we talk about the Asare Haruge Malchus, the 10 people in davening, we talk about this terribly tragic story where the Romans took out the 10 most splendid Jews and they murdered them. One of those is Chutzbes HaTurgaman. Chutzbes HaTurgaman, HaTurgaman means the translator. But the way it worked was that not every Chacham would hurt his voice if he spoke out loud, and also in a way to show him respect. What he would do is he would whisper to a person who had a very loud, like this great voice, like a James Earl Jones voice, and he would say it over to so the Nasi would say over his halacha to the Maturgaman, and then that Maturgaman would blast out the words of the Nasi. Say that like with a loudspeaker. That was their microphones in those days. So they would get a guy with a great voice, and he would say it out loud. They said Amru. So now they said to Chutzbes HaTurgaman, who was the translator, he was the microphone for Rabbi Gamliel, Amoid, stay in your place. Don't continue translating for Rabbi Gamliel. V'amad, and he did, and V'amad Amri, and he stopped. Amri, And the nation said, Ad kama nitzare v'nezel. How much further are we going to go and pain Rabbi Yehoshua? We're going to constantly pain Yehoshua. How long is he going to take advantage? They said Rabbi Gamliel's abusing Rabbi Yehoshua. He said, Bir Rosh Hashanah ishtak ad Sareh. In the last year on Rosh Hashanah, he gave Nitzare, he pained Rabbi Yehoshua. There, I'll tell you what they're referring to. There's a story in the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. It tells us that Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yehoshua came out with different days for when it was Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, which makes a very big difference. And Rabbi Gamliel held that Yom Kippur, because it turns out what Yom Kippur is on Tishrei. So Rabbi Gamliel put out a decree on Rabbi Yehoshua that on the day that according to Rabbi Yehoshua's calculations was Yom Kippur, Rabbi Gamliel said, on that day I decree upon you that you should come to me on your Yom Kippur and walk to me carrying your money bag, and you should come to me. So Rabbi Gamliel, and over there Rabbi Yeshua didn't know what to do. He's in tremendous pain, and he knew that he felt strongly that Yom Kippur was on this day, and Rabbi Gamliel held it was on the other day, and on Rabbi Yehoshua's Yom Kippur, he ended up taking his money back and walking to Rabbi Gamliel. Imagine that, carrying your money on Yom Kippur. He's both carrying, he wasn't allowed to carry, and he was also carrying and he was muktzah, and he did it on total understanding that I totally trust in Rabbi Gamliel, but it was a tremendously difficult thing for him. And also B'Bechoros. Also, there's a different story in Bechoros, B'Maisa, Rav Tzadok Tzari. In the story of Rav Tzadok, again over there, it's a very similar story to over here, where Rabbi Yeshua argued with Rabbi Gamliel, and Rabbi Gamliel told him, Amoid, stand in your place. He made him stand in his place. Again, over there, he pained Rabbi Gamliel pained Rabbi Yeshua. So the nation started rallying behind Rabbi Yeshua. They said, Hachanami Tzare. Now also he's painting Rabbi Yeshua. Tavina Abre. Get up and we should pass him over. We should fire him. Let's change him over. We should take away his ability to be the Nasi. We should make a revolution against him and pass him over. Pass him over. Man nukim lei. Okay, but who should we hire in this place? Nukmei Rabbi Yehoshua. We should hire Rabbi Yehoshua. Rabbi Yehoshua was the greatest chacham. He's the most natural person to take over at that time. But the Gemara says, nah, we can't do that. Ba'maisahu. He's the one who the whole story happened to. We can't do that. That's a tremendous. We have to. Rabbi Gamliel he might have a very strict policy, but he's still a Talmud Chacham. He's a tzaddik. He's from the house of the Nesiim. He's not somebody who we could do. It's such a chutzpah for us to do it. It would cause him pain. Chas v'shalom to cause Rabbi Gamliel pain unnecessarily. It's too heavy, the pain. We can't appoint Rabbi Yeshua. Says the Gemara. So who's the next person you would say is the most appropriate? Nukmei Rabbi Akiva. Perhaps we should establish Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva was in the Beis Medrash. Imagine that Beis Medrash. Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva wasn't even the greatest one of the Chachamim at that time. We see Rabbi Yeshua was even greater. Rabbi Yeshua was one of the Rebbeim of Rabbi Akiva. Appoint Rabbi Akiva. Says the Gemara, no. Dilma Anushlei. Perhaps he'll end up getting hurt from the fact that he's like starting up with Rabbi Gamliel. Why? The Lesles Chosavos. We know that Rabbi Akiva was about tshuva. Rabbi Akiva's family, he was an Amma Aretz earlier in his life, and he wasn't from a family of Talmidei Chachamim. So although he was so great in himself, we were concerned for his sake that he didn't have the merit of his forefathers. He didn't have heavy merit from his forefathers, and therefore perhaps we had to be sensitive that perhaps he would end up getting hurt. Says the Gemara, Ella Nukmei Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. This is the famous Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. We're going to see, this was the Gemara that he was 18. Nukmei, we should establish Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah to who Chacham, for he is a Chacham. He's a tremendous Talmid Chacham. He would be very good at this job. V'hu Ash, he's wealthy. V'hu Asiri LeEzra, and he is the 10th generation of Ezra HaSofer. Ezra HaSofer is he has a sefer from Tanakh is made from him. He's one of the Ksuvim is Ezra. Ezra is the one who led Klal Yisrael back out from Gullus in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. Ezra was the one who led the Jews out from Persia, and he brought them back. At least whoever wanted to go with him, he brought them back to Eretz Yisrael and to Yerushalayim, and he was the one who was built the second Beis Hamikdash. So he had tremendous chos avos. We see as chos avos, if we're a tzaddik, we could help our generations up to 10, even 10 generations. We see Ezra, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was 10 generations from Rabbi Elazar, from Ezra. And here he was, he was still getting the merit from Ezra of 10 generations back. That's 10 generations back from us, by the way, is like I know Yonina Siegel is 10 generations from the Vilna Gaon. So that's the Vilna Gaon was in the late 1700s. He lived in the 1700s, like from the 1720s to the 1790s, about the same time as George Washington. So all the way from the time of George Washington, they were still getting the merits coming from to this day. V'hu chacham, so Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he's the perfect man. Hu chacham, he's the chacham. That's very good. The imakshile, that if they ask questions, mafarik lei. Mafarik means they can answer. Or by the way, 3 lines now from the bottom. V'hu asher. Why is it important that he's wealthy? Says the Gemara, he should be wealthy. The islay lefluche lebei kesar. If there are people that come to bribe the Caesar, at this time the Jews were under control of the Romans. Right. This is only a little bit after the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. The Romans had just destroyed the second Beis HaMikdash in the times of not long before this at all. Lebei kesar afu azal upalach. He's also going to be able to go and he has money. He could use his money on them. He could use his influence. Also, v'hu asiri Ezra, and he's the 10th generation from Ezra HaSofer. The Islay Schos Avos, that he has the Schos of his forefathers. V'lo matzi anishlei. So Rabbi Gamliel is not going to be able to start up with him. Asu v'amrulei. So they decided, good idea. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is the perfect man. Asu, they came, v'amrulei, and they said to him, Nichalei lamar de lahavi reish mesifta? Is it good with you to be the head of the mesifta? Amar lahu, he said to them, Ezel ve'imlach ve'inshi beisa. Basically, I have to go and discuss it with my family. I have to discuss it with my wife before a person goes to listen to the sensitivity. He was offered to become the Nasi. He was offered to be the king here. He was offered to become the president. And he says, I don't know. He didn't jump at it. He didn't just go jump at it. I have to ask my wife. He said, I have to go and ask my family. It's a lot of responsibility for them also. It changes their whole life. So I can't just go and make, okay, I would love to be love to be the president. But it's not only my decision. I have to ask the other people involved. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah went, and he was a young boy at this time. He was only 18 years old, and he went back to ask his family. V'imlech b'debisu. And he asked, v'imlech means that he asked the advice, b'debisu and his wife. Amra lei, she said to him, Dilma, we're going now to the top of Chaf Ches Amud Aleph. Mazel Tov on finishing Chaf Zayin Amud Beis. Chaf Ches Amud Aleph. Dilma ma'abrin lecha. Perhaps they're going to pass you over also. Amr Allah lishtamish inshi yoyma chada b'kisa. A person uses a cup one day, demukra, a fancy cup, v'lemachar litbar, and the next day gets broken. It happens. Amr lei. She said to him, Les lecha chiyurusa. Okay, but there's another problem with you becoming the head. Les lecha chiyurusa. You don't have white hair. And it's not proper for a youngster, a little youngster, imagine that. A little youngster coming up and bossing people around, running the show. So it's not proper. People don't have proper respect. They're not going to have respect. It's not respectful for them. You don't have white hair. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah heard that. But then, Hahu Yoima Bartamni Sari Shani, he was only 18 years old, and having Isracha Shlei Nisa. A miracle happened. V'hadrule tamni sari dari chirusa, and sprouted from him 18 rows of white hair. Hainu de Ka'amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. This is the famous words that we learned last year in the Mishnayos and Brachos. That Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he said, Harei ani ki ben shivim shana. I am like I'm 70 years. And he did not say v'lo ben shivim shana. He didn't say I am 70 years. He said I'm like 70 years. Why? Because he was only like 70 years, because the truth was he was only 18 years old. But then he was like 70 years because he grew, he sprouted white hair, just like he had the appearance of somebody being 70, so as to be respectful to those people who he was teaching Torah to. Okay, we're going to stop over here.